I'm going to show you how we put together our Comfrey tea makers. I've been using one of these for a couple of years and it's really useful, really handy, but it's quite small, so I'm planning to make another 3. As well as Comfrey tea in 2 of the pots, we'll be brewing nettle tea in the other 2 pots. Now, nettle's good for nitrogen, which helps green growth, so growth of leaves and stems, whereas Comfrey is good for potassium, so that's good for stimulating blooms and fruit. So we'll have a supply of both. The method is quite simple. I didn't invent it. It's a collection vessel. In this case, this is a 25 litre bucket with lid, which I got from Amazon. They're not expensive. So that collects our Comfrey tea. And then another vessel which has holes in the bottom, in which you place the Comfrey or the nettle, and slowly it decomposes and the exudate drips through the holes into the collection bucket, where it's then available for use. And one fits very conveniently inside the other, like so. And as an addition, I'll be putting in a tap at the bottom. These are available again on Amazon. Water butt tap with a hose pipe connector. And it's a fairly simple job just to put the tap into the base of the collection vessel. We'll do that now on camera. So the first job is to decide where you're going to drill the hole. There's a couple of considerations here actually, because the lower down the vessel, the more of the exudate will be available. But the downside, well, you can't go too low because you're going to have to get this nut inside the bucket. You're going to have to be able to turn that nut. So if you go too close to the bottom, you're not going to be able to get the nut on, so just be careful that you don't go too low down. The other consideration is that if you are intending to put the bucket onto a surface like this, then don't go lower than there, because otherwise it won't sit cleanly. Now I have mine as low as I dare go without going too far, so I can still get my nut on, because it's always hung over the edge of a structure. So I will decide to go there. So this is the spot for making the pilot hole. Fairly confident that I'll be able to get the nut on inside. And I'll drill my pilot hole. Drill wasn't central, but it didn't matter. It's quite thin stuff, so you don't need any sort of power, but you do need a bit which is the right size. This bit is very slightly smaller than the diameter of the connector of the tap, because this stuff being so thin, I've found that I can tap the plastic so that I get a nice tight fit. Although there is a washer, and it's the washer that makes the seal between the two layers of plastic. There's probably safer ways of doing this, but and it's a very long bit because of what it's used for. So I'm just going to go slowly, slowly, slowly. And there's my hole. And then we screw the tap in. To get the angle right, you'll make a little tap inside the hole. Sorry, a tap meaning a place for the screw to lock into, as opposed to the other kind of tap. So that's screwing in nicely because it's made itself a tap, made itself a way through in the screw. But that's not what makes the seal. What makes the seal is the pressure of the nut against the washer at the back. So we'll put that in now. Make sure the washer's nicely seated. And on goes our nut. Simple stuff. Don't think you can see in there, can you? There's our nut at the top of the view now. Our tap and our nut. So it really needs little more than hand tight, I've found, and it'll make a watertight seal. If it does drip a bit, then you'll have to get some sort of spanner down there and tighten it up a little more. So I've just got that hand tight now. And you can see how it works. Just hangs over the end of a bench of some sort. We insert the vegetation vessel inside it. And we're good to go. Oh, and the last bit of construction is to make a lid. Unfortunately, these potato buckets, 30-litre potato buckets, don't come with a lid. So I've cut a piece of cardboard just wide enough to fit between the handles so that it won't dislodge. You will need a lid because otherwise rain will get in there and dilute your exudate. So there's my piece of cardboard, and I've got an old potting plastic bag which I've turned inside out so it's less obtrusive. So that makes the whole thing waterproof. I'll just seal it up. Seal it up with some tape. That's how I did it. There's all sorts of ways, as long as you construct a lid that will stay in place. So I put a brick on top to hold it in place. That's our Comfrey tea brewer. Luxury model, all ready for action. So we'll go outside now and collect some comfrey and get the thing working. So here's our completed bucket. We've used this for a few years now, and I'm making 3 more so that we can have comfrey and nettle, and 4 lots on the go. Once we've collected the comfrey or nettles, we place this really heavy, in this case it's a granite stone, on top of the plant material to compress it, which I'll show you. And then to finish off, we've got a lid. And something to keep the lid on. That's the complete contraption. So after about maybe 3 weeks of compression of the plant material, the lower bucket will start to collect the exudate, and we have a nice convenient tap at the bottom which we turn on to issue our exudate. I have this cute little cup which I use to collect as much as I want, and then I'll dilute it 10 to 1, usually 10 to 1. I do it on colour, so that if it's not particularly concentrated, then it might be 6 or 7 to 1, something like that. Let's go and collect some comfrey. So this is our comfrey patch. It does fairly well in the spring before the trees are in leaf, and then it's in a bit too much shade after that. So I'm planning to cut down a branch or 2 of this sycamore to allow the comfrey to do better throughout the season. But these leaves are in a great condition now for collection, so we'll collect a good handful or a barrow full of the lower leaves to be used in our comfrey tea maker. These comfrey are just coming into flower, so we'll let them flower. Particularly good for bees. I can see some bees on the far one there already, so we'll let the bees have their way with the flowers, and we'll just cut off some lower leaves today for our comfrey tea maker. The leaves are for use in the tea maker. The stems, not so. So we use the stems on the compost heap. So you can see I'm taking the lower leaves to allow the upper part of the plant to continue growing. So I think we've got enough there now to get started with our Comfrey tea maker. First batch. Just over here we can see the nettle patch, which we'll be using over the next day or two to collect some nettles for our nettle tea. As you probably know, nettles are rich in nitrogen, so we use those for early season growth to stimulate green growth on the plants. And comfrey is particularly good for potassium, which is rather like tomato feed if you're non-organic. Heavy in potassium, which promotes flowering and fruiting. So if you've got a mixture of both comfrey and nettle, then you can cover both. So here's our batch, and we're all ready to put them into the tea maker. If you mash them up a bit, one way or another, to get them started. By roughly ripping them apart, that's better than doing a clean cut, I think. They should be healthy, as best you can make out. We did some once at the end of the season with what looked like mildew on the leaves, and when I came to use it, it certainly spread a fungal infection onto some of the plants that we used it on. So I've been very wary of doing that since. I thought that fungal infection is very plant specific, but we used the comfrey tea on some dahlias, and certainly the dahlia leaves were infected with a superficial fungus. After doing that, didn't do them a great deal of harm actually, and didn't last long, but it was there. I'm using bits of the stalk of the leaf there, as you can see. I think that's okay. So I'll just show you what we've got inside there. That's our heap of comfrey leaves. When we place our heavy granite stone on top, simply lay it on top like so. So that's giving us some compression. And then leave nature to do the rest. I'm going to just put a little bit of water on top of everything to sort of get it started. Just enough so that the leaves aren't drying out, but not so much that we dilute the exudate too much. And now we put our lid on so that it doesn't catch rain as well. And our brick to keep the lid on. So this is it, the final comfrey tea maker. When I've got the other three going as well, I'll find a better place for these. And once it's going, the tap is so convenient. You just get some of your tea as and when you need it. You don't have to fish around and get dirty, and it comes out quite deep in colour, rather like a very, very strong tea, and the correct dilution is very, very weak tea, so it comes out at around about 10 times the strength. So you would add 10 times as much water, and that will give you the correct strength for either root feeding or else foiler feeding. Well, I just keep putting more comfrey on top as time goes on, so maybe there'll be 3 months or so of adding comfrey every 3 weeks, something like that, to keep the exudate coming. And then at some stage it begins to get rather full of stuff. It doesn't smell, incidentally. Comfrey barrels are notorious for smelling bad. This system, it simply doesn't smell. I think because the fluid is separated from the rotting leaves straight away. So after about 3 months, when it's really getting quite full of the old compressed leaves, I'll just take out the top bucket, empty it all on. I'll empty the stuff onto the compost heap. Takes a few seconds. Back again and start adding new leaves again. So very, very quick and simple operation. I hope you found that useful, and I hope you will think about making your own convenient comfrey tea maker.